Agency. We have David Apoji, who is his special advisor. And also joining us here, we have the country director, Search for Common Ground Nigeria, Sheikh Ali Nawaz. In the hall, we have beneficiaries on the project from Kano, from Ibadan, from Jos, and within Abuja. Joining us in the hall, we have our social media influencers. We have our media partners also in this hall. Once again, I welcome each and every one of you to the closeout event for the Working Together Against Corona. Please put your hands together for yourselves. A round of applause for yourselves. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please, I want us all to put our phones on silence so that we don't have any sound, obstruct any coverage. Thank you very much. We're moving straight to the opening remarks and goodwill messages. And I'll be welcoming the country director, Search for Common Ground Nigeria, to give his opening remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great privilege and honor to welcome you all to this closing event of our project, Working Together Against Corona, funded by European Union and implemented with support of many partners, including National Orientation Agency and all of the participants who are here with us in this room. Ladies and gentlemen, this project was, as customary for any closing event for a project, we have to talk about its inception, the journey of implementation, the achievements, but most importantly, the learning from that project. The learning is especially important because while we are closing the project, the challenge that the humankind faces in the form of the pandemic is not over yet. It's still very much a reality. But more than that, it is also important for us to learn from the implementation of this project because human race is becoming used to future pandemics, and we are sure that, or we are worried that in this century, we are going to face similar health emergencies. Also, while we talk about COVID, it is not only a health emergency as many of us would perceive, and it is very much also a risk to the peace and security in our communities. While we talk about it, when I remember the first time when we thought about implementing this project, it was unique in a way that normally we'll all sit together and think about conceptualizing the project. But with this one, we didn't have that luxury. We realized that we have to learn how to work from a distance or remotely and think about an implementation of the project. I'm glad while we came a long way, many of us lost their loved ones to the pandemic, and we are the few privileged ones still surviving the pandemic. And as we go throughout this day or throughout the presentations that my colleagues would be presenting, we'll think about the most significant change that this project was able to bring about in maintaining peace and security in Nigeria and globally. I'll stop here and once again welcome you all to the closing event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Ali Nawaz. And to give his opening remarks, we'll be welcoming the EU ICSP head of the regional team for foreign policy instruments covering West Africa and Central Africa, Giovanni Squandrito, to give his opening remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me. I'm Giovanni Squadrito, as had been said. I'm based in Dakar with my colleague Luigi, and we work together with the delegation here of the European Union to Nigeria. And our main mandate for the West African region and the Lake Chad is to rapid response to crises and conflicts. So what happened 2 years ago was this unexpected and huge crisis that affected all the world. And we were facing many challenges, in particular of course, from the health point of view, but of course from the social point of view. The lockdowns, the other measures, the difficulties from the social but also economic difficulties that we were facing were also had a big impact on our way of life, on our what we call also the social cohesion. So that was in this context the information had a big role. So because we experienced since the beginning that was a need of information, but of good information. Not in the meantime, there were many rumors, misinformation, ambiguous messages that were circulating, and of course, this beyond the fact of the health problems, this was also affecting the social structure, the social cohesion. So that was why we at the European Union we thought to this response to this crisis, this angle of the crisis, not minor angle, very important angle, that was from the information point of view, from the communication. So that was what we started this project with Search of Common Ground and other partners in order in some countries in the world privileging Nigeria because we thought that here there was a need of a special and action and intervention. And we thought through this action to provide reliable, credible, trusted information, and to pass the communication that we could together through this good information and good communication overcome the difficult situation. And this is also looking back at when we started to discuss with our partners, I remember that there was this important things that using different messages in a period where it was so obscure, the future. So talking about love at the Corona time. So that was really important. So thinking that passing positive messages, not just with some words, but with examples that using the media, all the media, from the classical, like the radio drama, or the talk show, radio talk show, but also the online media and information. That was really something that together in a coordinated approach, as the country director said, contributed to consolidate, to avoid that the crisis, the health crisis, could become a bigger crisis. So, and safeguarding the social cohesion, that was important. So now we are the closing event. Of course, there will be the explanation of what has been done and the details. Unfortunately, we can't stay for all the day, but we are happy to be here from Dakar. So that's really for us an honor to be with you. But I want to thank, first of all, of course, Search of Common Ground, our main partner in this project, but also the National Orientation Agency that has played a very important role, and also all the other media, local media. They are present here, but also they have done during this project an important and essential work. So thank you very much. I'm keen to listening the other intervention, and good luck for this day.
Round of applause for the head of regional team for foreign policy instruments covering West Africa and Central Africa. While he was giving a speech, I remember the title of one of the radio dramas, Love in Times of Corona. It was a very interesting radio drama. All right, okay, so next to give his opening speech, we're welcoming, representing the Director General, National Orientation Agency, Dr. Garba. We have his special assistant, Mr. David Apoji, representing Dr. Garba. A round of applause for Mr. David. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. The country director, Search for Common Ground, and our friend at the National Orientation Agency, the head of the regional team, foreign policy instruments covering West and Central Africa, the head from the Nigerian office of the European Union, and other important persons here gathered today. I bring you greetings from the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Dr. Garba Bari. He had planned to be here this morning because of the importance he attached to this particular event. Unfortunately, towards the evening, he was invited to the Federal Executive Council meeting that's holding today to make a presentation. And so he said I should represent him. And so I bring you warm felicitations from him. The National Orientation Agency, I have his speech here, which I will read, but I want to preface that speech with a few thoughts of mine. The National Orientation Agency had played very key roles, as you observed, sir, from the beginning of the outbreak of the coronavirus up until today, where we are at the stage of vaccination. In the outbreak, in the aftermath of the outbreak, the NOA was alternate lead at the community engagement and risk communication pillar of the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19. And in that role, our structure was used to carry messages to the 774 local governments of this country, where we have offices and footprints. Presently, in the period of the vaccination, we are collaborating closely with the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, where I sit as the deputy chair of the Community Engagement and Risk Communication Committee for the vaccination response to COVID-19. And we're still working to this very day on that. Having prefaced DG's speech with that, you permit me to verbatim read his message to this gathering. On behalf of the National Orientation Agency, I want to appreciate Search for Common Ground for implementing the Working Together Against Corona project in Nigeria. I also appreciate the European Union for funding this laudable project. The National Orientation Agency and the Nigerian government sincerely appreciate the continued support of the European Union in Nigeria. The National Orientation Agency, as an agency of the Nigerian government, is responsible for consistently raising awareness, providing timely and credible information to citizens, generate feedback on emerging issues for the government, and positively influence change in attitudes, values, and behaviors of citizens. The National Orientation Agency has actively engaged in the provision of accurate information and mobilizing Nigerians to act in ways that promote peace, harmony, and national development. The National Orientation Agency is excited and indeed willing to go into partnership with Search for Common Ground for a mutual collaboration stemming out of the Working Together Against Corona project. In particular, we look forward to working with the social media influencers who have been trained and engaged by Search on the project, leading to mutual utilization of the knowledge, learning, and improved capacities between both organizations. Specifically, we will work with Search for Common Ground in the scanning of the digital information ecosystem, including tracking of hate speech, misinformation, and rumor management, leading to the production of snapshots and bulletins for the next 3 months in the first instance. Search has also requested our contributions to review the script of its media content from some of its peace-building interventions targeted at communities who are suffering from the consequences of conflict. The importance of this component of the work is underscored by the impending 2023 general elections. On our part at the NOA, we look forward to linking our team of 37,000 fact-checkers who are located across the 36 states of Nigeria, and we are working towards accomplishing this, for common ground towards increasing their reach in relation to the tracking of hate speech, misinformation, and rumors on elections, religion, and in mitigating conflicts across various sectors. Again, I congratulate Search for Common Ground on the successful close of the Working Together Against Corona project and look forward to mutually beneficial partnership between our two organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. David, for that opening remarks. Moving on the agenda, we're going to be talking about the general overview of the project. And we'll be having Sheikh Ali Nawaz kickstart these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, I would like to welcome you all to the closing event. As I said in the beginning, as part of every closing event, we have to talk about all stages of project implementation from inception to closeout, not only to list down the achievements, but also to identify the learnings. The pandemic was an unprecedented challenge to humankind, with no doubt. And it was also a unique experience, a common experience globally that the mankind was having, which also provided an opportunity for improving global social cohesion. But nonetheless, this pandemic actually affected the social fabric of our communities. Because some of us in the peace building sector know that human interactions are the most important tool in maintaining peace and stability in our community. With all the lockdowns, that particular aspect was affected. While the human interactions became limited while every one of us was in the lockdown, these interactions, because of the advancement in technology, were translated mostly to the digital and media sector. With all its benefit and nothing to take away from that, it also gave some challenges in the form of disinformation and misinformation. This disinformation and misinformation was capable of causing chaos. And that is why I would like to thank and applaud the people who conceptualized the idea of this project, who said, let's intervene here, let's intervene on the information sharing aspect and countering the disinformation and misinformation caused by the unique nature of this crisis. In this regard, this project was divided primarily into two parts, if I may say, and in order to simplify it for everyone. One part was to counter the disinformation and misinformation by establishing a system of early warning and early response in the digital space. This system was cutting edge. As the crisis was unprecedented, I'm proud of being a part of human species who adapted to deal with it by innovating various forms of early warning and early response. And these forms included social listening, digital listening, and countering it by key messages of peace and stability. In this regard, I would like my colleague, Joy, to give us an overview of how the early warning and the early response system for this project worked, and what was the various lessons that were learned and some achievements that were made as part of the implementation of this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Cher. Okay, so on the EWA, we have a presentation slide for this. So on the EWA, on the Working Together Against Corona project, it was very interesting because we were daily monitoring conversations across social media channels to understand what people were saying about COVID-19. Let me have it in the next slide. I'll quickly just talk about the EWA. EWA, the early warning is a process that alerts decision makers to the potential outbreak, escalation, and resurgence of violent conflicts. But let me quickly move further to how we actually went about the tracking, not taking us into much details of what the EWA system is actually about. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So on the ICSP project, we engaged and trained informants, key informants, to recognize relevant rumors and submit them via WhatsApp, SMS, or calling via the toll-free lines. So these key informants in different communities were trained to understand what actually rumors look like, how to identify these rumors, and how to be able to, report these rumors. And also we conducted real-time social media listening using the TalkWalker platform. TalkWalker is a social listening tool we use to understand what people are saying about COVID-19 based on their public posts across 7 social media channels on a daily basis. And at the end of the project, we were able to track about 55,000 rumors across the social media platforms. Also, we provided a rumor log to radio stations, airing programs across the radio stations across Nigeria. We trained these journalists to be able to understand how to identify rumors on COVID-19. So when callers even call in, they're able to identify these rumors, and we have the rumor log where they always log in these rumors, and we are able to now provide alternate messages to these rumors that have been reported to us. On this project, one key lessons we learned on this project while carrying out these activities was there are several people that were not online. People in the rural communities were also being exposed to different misinformations on COVID-19 that were not being addressed. So we were able to identify some of these communities, a few of them, and we're able to engage these community people also to understand what are the rumors around COVID-19. A lot of questions from the community. I remember the first meeting we had with NCDC, what they told us was that the urban areas already have enough information. And what key challenges they were having was how to reach the rural areas. And this was one thing that Search for Common Ground tried to identify, to look into these rural areas and know what were their needs. And some of the rural areas we went into, you need to hear some of the rumors that were going on in those communities. There are things that are not even online, very funny informations. And Search for Common Ground was able to identify most of these rumors, and we used our radio programming to counter some of these rumors. Next slide. Then when carrying out this rumor management system, the next slide, I've talked about this. Next slide, thank you. Let's go to the toll-free line. So why we came about the toll-free line was because in some of these communities, we discovered that they don't have access to radio. The radio stations in those communities were very poor. The signals were very poor. And they needed to have access to timely informations. So we came about the toll-free lines. And on the toll-free lines, different communities had these toll-free lines, so their community leaders always call to verify information on COVID-19. They always call to verify, our community people are falling sick. Is it COVID-19? What are the nearest health centers we could go to? Where can we go to for information? So the toll-free lines were a place where they call to get information on where they can access the right information on COVID-19. So we came about the toll-free line after visiting most of these communities and seeing the gap. And this gap needs to be bridged. So we came up with a toll-free line. And interestingly, on the toll-free line, women engaged more on these lines. On our radio programs, women will hardly call to express their views on COVID-19. But on the toll-free lines, women will always call to express their concerns about the vaccines, express their concerns about the misinformation ploying in the communities. Oh, if they take this vaccine, they can't have children anymore. If they take these vaccines, their breastfeeding will become difficult. Can their husbands take this vaccine? So women opened up and they were able to express their fears and the misinformation they were having about the COVID vaccines, and were able to educate them further on what they should know on the COVID-19. And as the project is ending, we are actually routing these calls. We are complementing the NCDC hotline. So all the calls on the toll-free line will be going to the NCDC line at the end of the project, because towards the end of the project, because of more of these community people already have this line, so they learn to call this line. The lines keep ringing, especially about the vaccine. Or in our community, there are no places where we can take the vaccine. What is the vaccine really all about? The vaccine is killing people that took, manner of misinformation. So we keep educating them as much as we can. So as the project is ending, this has become a line that most of them are used to calling. So what Search for Common Ground is going to be doing is that the hotline will be complementing the NCDC hotline. So in a summary, this is what the rumor tracking about the project was all about. And at the end of the project, I can tell you that even some of the bloggers who were engaged understand how to track rumors on COVID-19. And also, we're able to have responses, like key responses to some of these rumors, like quick responses to some of these rumors. A manual was even developed for people to have guidelines on how to identify rumors on COVID-19. Some of the small initiative organizations, we trained them to understand how to be able to counter misinformation. So we came up with a manual that served as a guide. So even at the end of the project, we're not praying for any pandemic to happen in the country or anywhere, but once there's a pandemic, they have this guide to understand how can I quickly understand issues around rumors, how can I identify misinformation, and how can it be countered. I think I will pause here for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. And as I was saying in the start, that this project enabled us to think outside the box. And this was one part of it, that where we established a hybrid system, not only digital listening for rumor tracking, but also doing the conventional rumor tracking. And for that reason, we had focal points across all geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Because once we were conceptualizing this project, we knew that this is a challenge not only to a particular place in Nigeria, but it is a nationwide challenge, also a global challenge, I may say. Now moving on, we talked about rumor tracking, but as this project was conceptualized, it goes beyond that. It was rumor management in totality, which starts from rumor tracking, but most importantly, leads to a response to those rumors. And part of our response was, because human interaction was a challenge at that point, so media was used as an effective tool to respond to the various rumors and disinformations prevalent in the communities at that time. Without further ado, I'll ask my colleague Temison, who's our media specialist, to give us an overview what were the achievements and various lessons learned in the implementation of this aspect of the project.
Okay, so let's have the presentation for Temison come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Cher. Thank you, everyone. So, media is a very important tool for Search for Common Ground, because it's one of the tools we use in bringing stability to various conflicts. So the rumor management happened. Then what next? How do we disseminate information coming from the rumor management and tracking and all of that? How do we pass these messages across to people all over Nigeria? So we designed different media tools, media products that were disseminated across. So what did we do first? The project team conducted an information mapping to access various information channels through which citizens can access various information through trusted communication providers. And so radio drama, radio sports, talk show, podcasts, audio documentaries were some of the tools that were promoted through various platforms. So our radio drama, I think, is much talked about, and I'll continue from there. The rumor tracking products, which is bulletin was one of the tools that the scriptwriter was equipped with to conceptualize the script, conceptualize the cast, conceptualize the plot, so that it can reinforce the message that we're trying to pass. So findings from these snapshots, the analysis, and the rumor bulletins were shared with the scriptwriter to form the plot of the drama series. Also, there were concerns raised, from the talk show. So the radio drama actually complemented the talk show. So some of the concerns that were raised, that people could not freely discuss, on the talk show. These sensitive issues were crafted, creatively into the drama piece, so that people, with humor, satire, it can resonate with them. So we talked about some of the issues such as stigmatization of the COVID-19 survivors, exploitation and abuse of women and children, that happened during the COVID-19 crisis. So we produced 195 episodes, were produced, and in various languages, because during the information channel mapping, we discovered that, of course, we know that language is very important when you're passing information to people, especially the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. So it was in English, Hausa, Sokotanchi. Sokotanchi is, a brand of Hausa spoken in Sokoto. That's the northwest region of Nigeria. So that was devised particularly for that audience. Then we had production in Yoruba too, in Igbo language and Pidgin. So you can see that this cut across all the major languages that people can actually relate with in the country. So then we went to radio sports. We worked with some local stakeholders to design sports messages and jingles to raise awareness on the COVID-19 prevention measures. So the media team, in conjunction with the global media team too, had a series of meetings, because to change attitudes and behavior of people, you need to design and craft messages in a way that it won't compel them, but rather persuade them. So we came up with this kind of messages that were distributed around the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. So there were diverse voices. We even had some voices of influence in these localities. We had some where the religious leaders, youth leaders, community leaders were, produced voiceovers that played all around the radio stations. So it was an effective way of, passing these messages across. And one thing that I have to point out too is, unlike other several mediums or platforms where the use of course, nose mask is popularized, we tried, to shift away from that, because what we did was to instill hope in people that in spite of this pandemic, people can still live together. So it wasn't about just the use of nose mask and social distancing or physical distancing, but it was about how people can actually survive, in these times, which, of course, love in times of Corona is the perfect way, to project that. Then our talk shows, 156 episodes in these same languages that I mentioned earlier, Hausa, Pidgin, Yoruba, Igbo, and English. And I have to say, in between, we had our DML manager will probably touch on that later. In between, we had a listenership survey. You know, there are 3 R's which are very important to us: the reach, resonance, and the response. You know, so the reach, the media mapping, and all of that actually tackled the area of reach, where our coverage area, where we know where to disseminate our messages to. Then resonance, how are people accepting our messages? Are they accepting these messages, you know, positively or negatively? So we're able to find out, and came back and recrafted some of these messages, because we didn't have generic messages that could go on throughout the whole duration of the project. But, you know, we stopped in between and did our homework, then recrafted messages again to talk about times that are happening. So we had key experts come on our talk show to discuss various themes on raising awareness on key issues. Opinion leaders and community members also featured on our talk shows across these 6 geopolitical zones. We had our talk shows run over 12 radio stations across the country. Then more media products, like I mentioned earlier, podcasts, that, you know, because we had social media influencers on the project, you know, who were internet savvy and had a lot of following on social media. The podcast was very important because that's the, you know, that's the audience. So we used that as well. Then we had audio documentaries. We also worked with various people on our small initiatives. We had 9 grantees, you know, who did various initiatives. Some of them are in this room, who will share brief experience on what they did. So that'll be it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Temis. And just to give another additional thought on that, you know, as I said, this project was a steep learning curve for all of us, and it was a unique project in many ways. But we have learned a lot from it, which we would be now using in our other initiative. For instance, we moved away from media messaging to strategic communication. And how's that? Actually, the difference would be in media or mass media, you only think about broadcasting messages. But how I differentiate strategic communication is it's 2-way. You first listen and then respond, right? So how was the listening happening? As my colleague explained, that was the digital listening, which was happening through the use of TalkWalker software, in which a lexicon of key rumor terms was developed. And that lexicon was unique because it was in 6 languages. So maybe Google was doing it as well, but they were only in English. And we had people on ground who were feeding us in with those slangs which people were using as a means of spreading the rumors and disinformation. So when that lexicon was developed, every month we were putting those words in the software, and it was leading us to all the conversation that were happening on the digital space using those words. And with that, we identified trends. So this doesn't stop here. We then took that tracking tool or that tracking report and gave it to our script writers, who were then developing the radio drama using that rumor tracking bulletin. So that's how we moved away from just media broadcasting to strategic communication. And one evidence of it working was when we did the listenership survey in the start, we were not getting good response. And when the use of this rumor tracking system was done in the middle of the project, the second listenership survey that we did, actually, I would be corrected in the statistics when my DM&D manager speaks, but I think 80% of our responded knew about our radio drama. And the reason for that was we were talking to something which they were already discussing we had our hand on the pulse of the people, and we were not just talking about anything. We were talking about something which was the most current topics in their social media discussions and their digital discussions, and that's how it became most effective. So now we are taking this also and using it together with our colleagues from National Orientation Agency in dealing with the rumor and disinformation in relation to elections. We are also using the same approach in the farmers and herders related issues, and religious misinformation, disinformation. So all in all, while this pandemic was an unfortunate and tragic event in the history of mankind, it enabled us as peace builders to think out of the box and coin new solutions. With that, I'll stop here. I know our colleagues from the EU have a busy schedule, and I would like to thank them once again for being here with us for this event today, because it was with your support that we were able to achieve so much. And thank you. With this, we would like to break for the tea break.
Yeah, a tea break and a group photograph with the EU delegates outside. Thank you very much. come into the hall. We are going to be watching the documentary outlining some of the achievements on the project. So let's have the documentary played while we wait for other people to come into the hall.
Well, I just one point on the screen. I was thinking it's my glasses, but I think.
Nigeria in late February 2020 recorded. Nigeria in late February 2020 recorded the subcontinent's first confirmed COVID-19 case, after which it began to spread throughout the country. As of 19th October 2021 in Nigeria, 209,546 cases have been confirmed. 197,546 cases have been discharged, and 2,838 deaths have been recorded in 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Search for Common Ground Nigeria, through its Working Together Against Corona project, funded by the European Union, deployed the use of media programming in addressing issues that emerged from the pandemic to promote social cohesion.
We used to hear stories about people not believing in COVID-19. People will say no with COVID-19. At times they will say in Yoruba it's Sakoiba. That's a serious malaria. It's not COVID-19 that happens to people. But later when we started the program, in fact initially when we started the first program, the first edition that we did a Vox Pop, and people were saying that no, there is no corona in Nigeria, no corona at all. It doesn't happen in Nigeria. That even when you notice that, you see that it's people that came from abroad that have corona, especially the rich. But when we started the program, we started inviting people, resource people who are knowledgeable about coronavirus. They started telling the people, broadcasting to people that this corona is real. Kajoshe has been very impactful and very insightful program.
Monthly rumor tracking bulletin helped me understand how rumors, how misinformation works. And it also helped me craft messages, craft content that I've been putting out during the pandemic to fight the plenty rumors that we have online, both on social media and even through my blog. And the methodology that was explained also in the bulletin helped me even do other aspects of my job.
Everybody did not believe there is COVID-19. The awareness from Search for Common Ground, we in Bodija here, we believe that there is COVID-19.
The radio drama was produced using the conflict snapshot and rumor bulletins.
We learn more about the symptoms of COVID-19 and also the effective ways. Try to make sure that we teach our neighbors and other friends the importance of observing the protocols of COVID-19. And alhamdulillah, for now, as you can see, we are really using the face masks, washing our hands. Our children now are used to protocols. There is no any other organization that motivates me. It is only Search.
Since September 2020, Search Nigeria has made significant progress in its implementation of the Working Together Against Corona project by strengthening access to timely, accurate, and trusted information, both online and offline, on COVID-19 in the country to mitigate the harmful effects of the COVID-19 crisis on social cohesion, stability, and ongoing conflicts.
Okay, thank you very much. That was just a brief documentary on some of the achievements of the project. It's way beyond the documentary. It's just that we can't start doing a very long video, for everyone to watch. So we're moving next to some testimonials. We have some beneficiaries with us here that will be sharing a bit of their success stories. They have 1 minute each, as I've told each and every one of you. We have Miriam. Miriam works with Kasgi in Kano. So we'll be starting with Miriam. So quickly share some of your results as a result of the project.
Thank you very much for the recognition. I am Mariam Garba Usman, the Executive Director, Center for Advocacy in Gender and Social Inclusion, CACSI. As she rightly said, I'm from Kano State. We implemented this project with the support of Search for Common Ground, and it's in 2 phases. We engage primary school pupils through the Kano State Ministry of Education and State Universal Basic Education, SUBEB. We engage the primary school pupils as agents of awareness because we realize there are a lot of information regarding COVID-19, but it's not targeting the younger kids generation because all information are targeting the elderly persons. If you go to radio and TV station as well as the newspapers, they are all targeting the elder persons. So we engage these primary pupils, and we even engage them in competition.
We were aware that, and we believe that COVID-19 is real, and we could trust these informations that Search rolls out, and we could even verify that these misinformations are not true, and we don't just believe yeses. Thank you. Thank you, Search. Thank you, European Union. Thank you.
Thank you for that quick one, Debbie. Thank you. Also, we have one of the producers of the radio dramas here. He produced the Yoruba radio drama. The Yoruba radio drama, from our engagement with people in Lagos and Ibadan, it did a lot because, like Teresa said during his presentation, they used entertainment in breaking down some of those issues. You know, the Western people never even believed there was COVID at all. You need to hear some of the misinformation. So the radio drama, if you can hear Yoruba, the radio drama was full of comic and a lot of interesting entertainment that made people listen to that Yoruba radio drama. So we have the producer of the radio drama here, Mr. Tolu. Let's quickly hear from you in 1 minute, Mr. Tolu.
Thank you very much, Joy. My name is Tolu Fagbure. And we'll say quickly that Ibadan is a city that you need to convince in everything. You must convince Ibadan if you are doing anything. And in this case, the first problem there was that, you know, the base community, the intertwined community, lived in a communal kind of nature where everybody lives in clusters. So the first problem was they couldn't see anybody, evidently, that had coronavirus. So they were saying, where is the COVID-19? So everybody came and spoke big English, and they felt it was something in the air until we came with entertainment, which is what they understood. The communication now came to them in a medium that they understood. I'll break it into 3. First, the language. We spoke to them in Yoruba, and that once you speak to them in Yoruba, in the native language, they are welcome to listen to you. Next is that it is drama. Once it is drama, everyone wants to listen because naturally, the Southwest people are a fun-loving people. And then the dissemination, which is radio. Everybody has a radio. The Mikra drivers, the Okada man, the Marwa rider, the tricycle has a radio. Everyone has a radio, earpiece plugged in. In the markets, you had radio. In the rural area where you don't have DSTV and all those kind of things, you have radio. So it worked for them. So what you had was that because they could recognize, we made sure when we received the script and received the debrief, we made sure that we had the actors interpret the characters in such a way that they can recognize the characters in their communities. Now, that made them look, okay, this looks like somebody in my community, that looked like somebody in my community. So if this person is saying this, then what you now had was people, for instance, in the Yoruba radio drama, we had the Olukwagba, that's the principal. So you had people actually naturally gravitating towards the principals of schools in their communities and now asking informed questions. Questions that hitherto they didn't want to ask. One very important thing that I would say was that when you see people in queues in Ibadan, it's, from my own observation, it's either they are queuing for a freebie, queuing for entertainment, or queuing for food. But when I went to one of the centers to get vaccinated, I saw a queue, a massive queue that was not there at the vaccination center before. People didn't respond to come and get vaccinated. But when the radio drama came and it was really played, then you had people really now coming out massively to come and get vaccinated. And hey, this time, they made sure that they were listening to instructions, getting on the line, and queuing up and sitting up properly. That means it became more important to them than any other commodity because they wanted to get it at all costs. So with the radio drama, with entertainment, with radio, with the language and the engagement which we gave to them, we made people begin to get interested, ask questions, and move to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Mr. Tolu. Thank you so much. Also, we have JBW in the house. This is also one of the beneficiaries of the small initiative. I personally met them in Jos, in a very local community where they were trying to shoot a drama on the COVID-19, and even around that area, you see people trying to understand what is this all about. And they also have their own success stories on what they were able to achieve even across schools, even here in Abuja also. So over to you, JBW.
All right, thank you so much. All protocols duly observed. I'm Omorin Ubong David.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, you have 1 minute.
All right. Omorin Ubong David, the creative director for JBW Studios. It was a learning curve for us, right? Not just about the opportunity to pass out this information or try to address the misinformation and the disinformation about the coronavirus. It was actually a learning curve for us because there were certain things that we never thought were actually affecting society. You know, we hear from news, oh, this community has been affected, that community. So, but because it's not closer to us, the belief percentage might not really be of concern. But while we went on, with the project, one of the actors, actually told us that one of his relation, right, actually died of COVID-19. So it became a moment of impact for us because we had to see the need to put in all the zest and energy to ensure that nothing like that of sort, happen again in that sense. Though we don't have control over it, but we can make provisions, right, to mitigate in a way, the spread of it. So while we also did a little outreach, about the whole corona virus information, a student also confessed that her dad died of the same, disease. So it wasn't just about the success of the story, but it was about how can we get to the bottom, how can we get to even the locals, and make them understand the need for imbibing or adhering to these little precautionary motives, right? Precautionary step to avoid all this. So for us, it was both a mix of a success story and also a sorrow in that sense. But we really appreciate Search for Common Ground for that opportunity and the EU for providing the funds, at least to get this message out there so that people don't live in isolation of what's actually happening in the society. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for JBW. Okay, to speak for the influencers, I think I'll have Razak. Let's have Razak in 1 minute share your success story. Thank you.
Okay. I had the opportunity to work as one of the influencers for this project, and it was quite the enlightening experience. I remember. Let me just start off with an incident that occurred at home. I have a gate man who did not believe at all in the COVID-19, in the existence of COVID-19. In fact, he feels that the best thing to do in terms of COVID-19 is just to take Ogogoro. He will say, Oga, forget COVID-19, no day, just take Ogogoro. So, but, and at the time I wasn't very, I myself wasn't very convinced as to the, validity of COVID-19. And then I joined this group of influencers with Search for Common Ground. And it was quite an eye-opener. I mean, it became my go-to place in terms of information, valid information with regard to the COVID-19 situation. And the monthly bulletins were just, they were just fantastic. And then I became an advocate for having people follow protocols and get used to this new normal. And it is something that I feel like at the end of the day has a far-reaching impact because of what I was learning, because of my presence in that community, I started to tell someone like my gate man, look, this thing is real. These are the things that are happening. These are the people that are dying. Because he's very local, and some of the things that we do on the group is break these things down. And then I shared with him some audio that were in his language. And before you know it, Bala became somebody that was wearing nose masks. In fact, at some point I got tired of it because every time he was wearing this face mask, and that's just a single person, and it was an upstream from being a part of Search. One of the other things that I was able to do was I was one of those who was able to get the grant with Connexus, and we were able to do an audiovisual online, a mini web series, which because of the timeless nature, I still find people go to it, and I still find people come back to me and say, look, we saw this on YouTube, and it was really good, and we're thinking, wow, so this is what happens. The series was basically around a cosmopolitan family, while of course there was need to reach out to people in the rural areas. Some people in cosmopolitan families, some people in your average modern family didn't believe that this virus existed. So the idea was trying to get them in with this series, and it worked. And even till now, I still find people that I still get notices on my phone with people saying, "Oh, this is wow, this is fantastic, this is eye-opening," and all this is thanks to Search for Common Ground and the European Union at large. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. If I want to take everyone in the hall, we're going to extend the timing, which we were supposed to have Michael. So we'll be ending these testimonials right now, but we still have more social influencers in the hall. And the summary of their success story is just that most of them became change agents even on the social media platforms. Most of them now understood how to be able to understand trends on the social media, how to craft messages to address some of these misinformations. And most of the social media influencers, not just about the COVID-19 project, their understandings became broadened from the project to be able to understand even little things as simple as fact-checking in a very simple way. So I think this is the summary of for the social media influencers, so that we can move on to the next agenda. On the agenda next, we have Matilde. She's from Brussels office, and she will be giving reflection from other countries involved in the implementation of the EU ICSP project. Over to you, Matilde.
Thank you, Joy. I had a presentation. I don't know if it's possible to put it on, but otherwise it's fine. So
it will come on shortly. Matilde's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Mathilde. I work with Search in Brussels, and I was part of the global project team that oversaw the implementation of the project across the 6 countries, because as you know, and as it was shared before, this project was implemented in 6 countries across the MENA region and Africa. So in Kenya, Nigeria, Palestine, Tanzania, Uganda, and Yemen. So what I'm going to do is share a bit our perspective from the global project implementation side, and also share some of the activities that were done in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, because I think they complement quite well what was done in Nigeria, and this will give you a kind of overarching view of what was done under this project. So over the past year and a half, we worked to fight myth and disinformation and build more cohesive communities in fragile and conflict-affected countries. With this program, we wanted to ensure that COVID-19 was not only seen as a crisis and a threat that could aggravate existing conflict dynamics, but also recognized as a shared challenge that could open new opportunities for peace by bringing people together across dividing lines, building resilience, and reducing tensions and divisions in the community where we work. So in Africa, our intervention focused on two main activity streams. The first one was access to information, and the second one was strengthening social cohesion. So I will start with providing an overview of what we did in other African countries under access to information. So as you see on the screen, we had four main goals with this activity stream. The first one was to ensure that the population in each target country had access to accurate and timely information about the COVID-19 pandemic and also the pandemic response, including marginalized and hard-to-reach communities. We also fought the spread of dangerous rumors and misinformation about the virus, as it was already explained earlier. We also tried to foster trust between citizens, local authorities, and health providers, and prevented the stigmatization of groups and communities. So to do so, our teams leverage on such decades of experience in media for social change. So we have produced radio dramas and talk shows about the impact of COVID-19 on different topics, such as education, mental health, or violence against women. And we also broadcasted across different countries radio short spots about preventive measures against the virus. As part of this activity stream, we also trained media professionals and social media influencers on rumor management and fact-checking. Because what we've learned from our past work on the Ebola crisis was that the importance of the messenger is as important as the message when it comes to fighting rumors and disinformation. So in this project, and this was already demonstrated by the different people who just spoke, our teams at Search work closely with trusted social media influencers, religious leaders, artists, and other local influencers to ensure that our activities and our messages had a broad reach and also engage the most vulnerable groups. So now I'm just going to give you some examples of what we did in the other countries. So on the screen you can see two pictures. The first one is an activity we conducted in Kenya. So in Kenya, our team set up a very successful virtual dialogue platform and early warning, early response system in order to increase local collaboration in the response to the pandemic. So to create this platform, Search Kenya identified community leaders, such as religious leaders, women and youth groups, peace committees, or even security forces, who collected COVID-19 related information among the communities. So they were initially meeting on a weekly basis and then on a monthly basis, and they shared key information about how COVID-19 was evolving in the community. They flagged some of the challenges they were facing, and discussed together how to better organize the response to most effectively limit the spread of the virus, while also maintaining or strengthening social cohesion. And this mechanism was very successful because it allowed the Kenya team to adapt some of its activities to emerging needs on the ground. So for instance, they decided to produce a children-oriented TV commercial in a cartoon format because one of the needs that emerged from the early warning platform was that some pupils at school were discriminated against because they were wearing masks, and other pupils thought that they were carrying the virus. So there was a lot of discrimination around that, and that's why we created these cartoons to kind of address the issue and do some non-discrimination and awareness-raising messages. If you maybe can just go back to the previous slide, you will also see, so in Uganda, we organized several capacity-building trainings on conflict-sensitive journalism and fact-checking for journalists who were both coming from the refugee community and the host communities. This is also, so you will see a picture there on the right side of one of the training. In Tanzania, we did a similar activity where our team coached media professionals and key social media influencers. And the aim of these capacity building trainings were to ensure that participants were equipped to deliver accurate information about the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to continue with just two short examples. Like in Nigeria, in Uganda and Tanzania, our teams produced audio spots in local languages to disseminate information about the prevention measure to tackle COVID-19. The audio spots also promoted positive narrative, explaining how social distancing could be applied in the local context, and also preventing the stigmatization of individuals or groups that were affected by COVID-19. And finally, in a last example under access to information, this activity, is what our team in northern Uganda did. They broadcasted an interactive youth radio talk show called Lugara Shabab that gave voice to the youth affected by the crisis, to also ensure that the voice of the youth was heard and that could be brought into perspective. So under social the second pillar of activities was social cohesion. So initially, we thought that these activities will aim at preventing the deterioration of social cohesion due to social isolation and lockdowns that were implemented in different countries. But in the end, we ended up focusing heavily on building trust as we were going into the pandemic. So our activities around social cohesion focused on lessening tensions by promoting messages around social cohesion and opening conversation about the impact of the pandemic and the response to it. We also worked with different groups on strengthening collaboration across divide to address the COVID-19 crisis and its long-term effects. So before going into the examples that were done by other countries, I will just share two activities that were also done at the global level, so in Africa and the MENA region. So throughout the project, SEARCH produced quarterly research on how COVID-19 was impacting conflict dynamics, which consists an important base of knowledge that we can that can shape effective response to the pandemic and future one. And it was the first time that at SEARCH we were doing this cross-country comparison across different countries and different regions. We also provided guidance to media teams on how to communicate about the COVID-19 vaccine and how to integrate some vaccine messages into our programming, as it's an issue that emerged as a key concern in all the target countries. So I'll conclude with giving you 4 examples of activities we did around social cohesion. So on the right side of the slide, you'll see a picture from Tanzania where our team and its radio partners produced an interactive radio program called Baki Salama, which means stay safe in Swahili. And the aim of this program was to analyze and discuss the impact of the COVID-19 crisis and related measures on existing conflict dynamics. On the left side, you see pictures from northern Uganda, where our team produced the Boda Boda Men drama series, which followed the adventures of a motorcycle driver and tackled different themes related to the pandemic, such as prevention measures, stigmatization among the communities, pregnancies in the refugee settlements, or debunking rumors or misinformation about the pandemic. So it was broadcast by our radio partners in northern Uganda, but also by Boda Boda drivers in the refugee settlements and the host community. So that's the Boda Boda drivers you see on the picture. If you can move to the next slide, there are some more pictures. So in Kenya, our team distributed personal protective equipment to vulnerable population across the different project locations. This was also an emerging need that came up from the early warning system, because it was reported by several community members that some communities had difficulties paying for masks and protective items, and that it was also an issue, as I mentioned before, in schools, because it kind of created differences between the children whose parents could afford masks and those who couldn't. And one last example is, and I think you can move to the next slide, across all African countries, Nigeria included, we supported local community-based initiatives that contributed to preventing the spread of COVID-19, encouraged collaboration among individuals and groups across dividing lines, and promoted social cohesion during pandemic times. So these initiatives were implemented towards the end of the project, like the second half, because they aim to ensure that we were answering to concrete needs that emerged since the beginning of the pandemic or new challenges related to COVID-19. So on the screen you can see some examples. In northern Uganda, we did a lot of activities around farming for peace and peace gardening that brought together members from the host communities and the refugee communities in order to improve their livelihood and food security. There is no picture, but in Western Uganda, we also had a group that organized girls' empowerment activities and vocational training on tailoring, handcrafting, and also hairdressing to address the increase in early marriages and unwilling pregnancies that increased during the pandemic. On the left, you can see a street art mural initiative that was done in Kenya by a street artist that displayed messages around social cohesion and aimed to mitigate the spread of false information. In Kenya, we had a lot of creative groups. Another one was a theater group that organized participatory theater activities about the relationship between youth and the police during pandemic times. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of what was done in other countries. Of course, more activities were organized, but that's just to also showcase like different approaches that were done across Africa. Maybe just before concluding, I would like to thank the Nigeria team for their impressive work done under this project. I think throughout the project's implementation, you have really had an innovative and adaptive approach to the project, which was demonstrated by the different initiatives you put in place to better respond to the emerging needs on the ground. And you really did some of the most impactful work on the project with the rumor tracking, with the setting up of the toll-free line, and also with the community awareness dialogues you conducted as part of the project when you realized that some communities in the rural areas were not necessarily reached by the radio program and the online work. So on behalf of the entire global project team, I would like to congratulate you for your success and the tremendous work you've done under this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So we're moving on to having Michael, the DML manager, Search for Common Ground Nigeria, share summary findings from the final evaluation on the project. We're moving very fast on our agenda and we're right on time.
All right. Good morning, everyone, once more. My name is Michael Oyinlola, and briefly, I will just run us through some of the interesting findings and the results we have seen so far from the final evaluation of the Working Together Against Corona project, particularly in Nigeria. I don't know if you can get the slides up, but let me also mention that the evaluation that we have done in-house, as well as the international consultant, particularly for us in-house, has been sitting on agency and ownership, has been sitting on institutional legitimacy, polarization, and social cohesion. Because of the global project that we've done, an international consultant was recruited for balance, for transparency. Like you heard from Mathilde, this project was implemented in Uganda, in Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries. So it is important that we got an international consultant who has come in with a different perspective, an independent perspective to do the final evaluation on the project. As you can see, this project was also implemented in Palestine, Yemen as well. And like we all know, Cher and the rest of my colleagues have also mentioned the objectives of the coronavirus project to increase effectiveness and conflict sensitivity of COVID-19 response, to mitigate harmful effects of COVID-19 crisis on social cohesion, stability, and ongoing conflict prevention efforts, and build global capacities and tools to promote resilience to the pandemic. Please, can we, next slide. So the international consultant who is still currently working on the final report, next slide please, started this assessment in August 2021, and the key objectives of this final evaluation guided by these key areas. We wanted to look and map the key findings from the results. We also want to measure the extent to which the program has achieved its planned goals, understand how the program has contributed to behavioral change and trust in COVID-19 measures, and you can see the rest of the key objectives of the final evaluation. So primary data collection was done in 3 waves, and this was also supplemented by desk review. So the first wave was participants and connectors survey. Some of us here participated. I don't know if anyone was reached out to during the final evaluation in-house. Okay, yes, thank you. So that was the first wave. The consultant collected information. Then the second wave of the primary data collection was a deep dive case study, looking at critical case studies, behavioral change, social norms, looking at individuals and looking at groups as well in terms of how they're changing. And because the project heavily utilized social media and radio programming, the wave 3 was on social media survey, global influencers, social media campaign as well. So a bit of a background on how primary data was collected and was supplemented with desk review, which is the secondary data. Next slide, please. Now, I will just talk briefly on some of the key findings that we've seen, and I will take you down. You can see, based on the program's overall activities, whether it is relevant to Nigerian context, 98% of the respondents stated that the project was relevant to the needs of their community. And what do we mean by relevance? There's the evolving context of the COVID-19 was changing. And as it was changing, how was the project able to respond to some of these changes that we are seeing? We spoke about how we came about our strategic communication to address some of the issues, rumors, misinformation, and disinformation. There was also real-time data that was generated by Search for Common Ground. Like we said, some of our tools for tracking hate speech were probably tracking English languages, right? English language hate speech. But our community effort ensured that we were able to capture some slangs, some local dialect rumor that we responded to. And part of what also supported these key findings were our periodic conflict scan, which we were doing every quarter, and also our early warning report. If we look at the second key finding, which is talking about tackling misinformation and fear through COVID-19, a bit of an encouragement for Search here and also for Donor is that Search could have worked better with CSOs and CBOs because they have they can easily get to the grassroots, right? So although we did this small initiative towards the end of the project or towards the final phase, but one of the learnings we are taking from here is to ensure that at the beginning of project like this, we identify the CSOs, the community-based organizations who can easily get to the community members and share our messages better. The next slide, please. So we want to talk about the extent to which the program was able to influence overall trust in COVID-19 responses. We can see here that as at the first round of the assessment, 26% respondents agreed to the statement that the government is doing its best to consider the needs of everyone equally around making decisions about COVID-19. But as at the end, the final evaluation, when it was done, we can see that this number has risen from 26 to 46. So there was a 20% increase based on what the respondents are telling us, so which is also good for us. In terms of behavioral change, how this has affected behavioral change, we can also see that 70% of the respondents stated that they had greater ability to identify and counter negative messaging, because they were not able to do this before, but because of continuous information, because of how we placed ourselves strategically for the communication and the information we are giving people, they were able to identify and reject negative messages. And we can see again, 67% of the respondents affirm greater willingness to reject harmful messaging, right? Messages that they feel are harmful to the community, that is affecting their social cohesion. They query it, and like Joy said, because they have access to toll-free lines, they were able to verify this information. And lastly, on the slide on vertical cohesion, please the next slide, we can see that 44% of the respondents reported strengthened relationship and positive engagement between community members. So cohesion are in two ways, if I can explain. There's the horizontal cohesion and there's the vertical cohesion. The horizontal cohesion looks at how community members relate and interact with one another. Initially, the figure or the percentage was low. But as a result of our program, we can see that there's a positive engagement between community members because they can also share information around COVID-19 and some of the changes they are seeing. However, 23% of the respondents reported strengthened relationship and positive engagement between community and security forces. This is quite low for us, and we could almost understand why the relationship between community members and security forces is diminishing, right? And this is the vertical cohesion. The horizontal cohesion looks at relationship within the community, and the vertical cohesion looks at relationship with the government people and the community people. And there's a bit of a decrease there. And thankfully, we have new projects who will be implementing in Benue and Adamawa to address some of these things. And lastly, 60% of the respondents stated that there's a greater willingness to share positive messaging or good practices in the community. So if I'm wearing my nose mask, I want to encourage more people to do that. If I'm keeping social distancing, I'm encouraging more people to do that. We are seeing that result. And finally, 51% reported that there was improvement in responses of aid and health practitioners. Initially, health practitioners were not responding the way they feel they should have responded, but now, as at the end of the final evaluation, the number has moved to 51%, which is good for us. So like I said, this final evaluation is being done by an independent international consultant. This is preliminary findings. By the end of April, when we have the full report, of course, we'll publish it and we can share the link with you on our platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. Thank you so much. Like I said, we're moving very fast. So we're going to be having the country director share with us the sustainability plan for this project. And after we have share, I think we can still take one or two testimonials before we go for lunch. So let's have share the sustainability plan. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a peculiar meeting. Normally we are always behind the agenda. Here we are ahead of the agenda. And maybe we want to have the lunch very soon. I'll ask my colleagues to follow up on that. But no, I think it's very important that we discuss sustainability. And I have just the right audience for it. I see a lot of young faces in the room. And when you talk about sustainability of initiative, our biggest hope is the youth. So to my right, and mostly I'm seeing youth, and to my left it's government. So that's perfect recipe for sustainability, right? So no, in general, what is sustainability? Because I'm talking to my youth, right? Sustainability is a common criticism on NGO workers like myself, that we just come and we think very projectized, and the moment the project is over, everything ends, right? So to counter that argument, we say no, we would design our project in such a way that the benefits of the project continue beyond the end date of the project. And we think about it at the start of the project rather than only thinking about it at the closing event. So in this regard, sustainability, if I go a bit of old school lecturership, I would just say sustainability has three key components. One is community ownership and participation. The second one is institutionalization. And the third one is innovation for continued cooperation, right? Now, I'm giving you these three words, but let's talk about the first one, community ownership and participation. What does that mean for this project? In this project, we have worked with 20 social media influencers, right? We have worked with almost 10 community-driven initiatives, right? And I might not be accurate in numbers, but many radio stations across Nigeria. So today, when we end this project, my biggest hope is all of you that you would carry on the cause of this project in your personal life. You have been given this knowledge and these ideas on how part of things, you know what to do, and you don't need Search for Common Ground supporting you in a projectized format forever. You know, it's your country, it's your cause, and I think you are well equipped and capable and interested to carry it forward, right? So for me, that is my biggest hope, that if someone say, oh, your project ended, would the benefit end? No. We have 20 social media, I would not call it social media influencers, it's media influencers, right? Because social media doesn't work in isolation. You can come on conventional media as well. And that is, you know how to address this sensitive topic. What Common Ground approach must have given you is not to take any extreme position on anything, right? But to advocate for common ground, a win-win situation, so that you can convince more of your community members to agree to a common ground approach, right? So that, and then of course the small initiatives, we worked with, I think 10 community-based or national organizations, and they didn't just do it for the limited money. I think the money was nothing for those initiatives. It was more the cause which was driving everyone, and the cause doesn't end with the initiative ending. You are free to have more initiatives and all. So that's on the, and then on the media partnership, what we have done, this was a crazy time, you know, many people didn't know how to address this topic. Sensationalization of news and, you know, was a common practice in there. And at that time, when even our various trainings happened for the media practitioners, we I think, clarified, maybe we didn't clarify the dilemma, but we agreed on how to approach the dilemmas, if you like, right? We knew how to not reach conclusion without proper verification and all that. And I think my colleagues on the media side are our biggest hope, that they would carry it forward beyond the life of the project. Now that was community ownership and participation. And one correction, I heard some of our colleagues calling all of you beneficiaries. This is one term we don't like to use in Search for Common Ground, because who knows, maybe we benefited more and you benefited less, right? You are the participants, right? We would like to call you participants or partners in this initiative. And that's how partners work. You know, if we are taking the back seat now, you might be able to take the front seat or the driving seat. And that's what we hope that will happen. Now moving to the next component or next aspect of sustainability is for us institutionalization. And I'm very glad that with this project, we came to know about the importance of the National Orientation Agency. Because while this pandemic was considered mostly a health emergency, so many of us soon realized beyond health, it's an emergency for peace and stability in the communities. And when we looked around, who would be the best place to partner with us to deal with this situation was the National Orientation Agency with the right mandate and capacity to do that. We were able to work with them, and I'll actually appreciate the National Orientation Agency, and I take the blame for a bit that we could have done much better. But thank God we still did something, right? And as today we are closing this event, we are not closing it, we are handing it over to National Orientation Agency. Because one thing I really like about search, you know, in business, you know, there is a thing called growing concern, which says business lives forever, right? But in search, we like to say search exists to not exist. At some point, we would like that whatever we are doing, we are able to hand it over to the government to the extent that search is no more needed. And that is our overall objective. Until that happens, we will continue collaborating. But for this initiative, I think it's time for search to hand it over. And that's what we are doing, and I'm thankful to the David, a good friend from NOA, the Special Assistant to Director General, who is sitting with us hand in hand. And with this encouragement and enthusiasm, I think he has all the will and capability to hand it over. So how would we do the handover, right? The handover, we discussed various options, and let's go for the low-hanging fruit. So we wanted to connect the social influencers to NOA. And for that, an initiative was taken last week where there was a webinar in which we introduced the NOA. I hope that would have happened much earlier, but thank God it still happened. And this would not end here. And trust me, Search for Common Ground is always there for you, but NOA is the right agency who would be able to lead you more properly, and who is the most legitimate agency to do that, right? Not only with social media influencers. I think all the small initiatives, if you were someone who we thought were relevant to do something related to media, I think that they are the right avenue for you as well, right? And we would always be happy to play the interlocutor part. We will always be happy to connect in some way and support in some way. So that is our, and with the sustainability and institutionalization, we are not only limiting that to this particular project. I think what we learned from this project is we as Search for Common Ground need to work very closely with National Orientation Agency in all our initiatives so that sustainability and institutionalization doesn't come as an afterthought, but something which we think from the real start of the initiative. So that was for institutionalization. Now the third one is the innovation for continued cooperation. Now, I could have simply said continued cooperation, but when the fueling resource and the funding stops for cooperation, sometimes the cooperation stops, right? But we would not let that happen. We would innovate to continue the cooperation in such a way that it doesn't cost us a lot, right? So that's why the word innovation for continued cooperation comes in, that, you know, having a webinar doesn't cost us anything, or very little, right? Continuing to have a network on WhatsApp doesn't cost a lot, right? Right? We don't want to meet you 3 years from now and not remembering each other's faces, right? We need to learn how to remain in touch, to learn how to, because in Search for Common Ground, we say half of the conflict issues are solved by continued interaction. And we should not let this interaction end with the end of this project. And while we say once a searcher, always a searcher, right? So once you have worked with us on this project, it doesn't mean that the project is over or the very small stipend, which was peanuts, you know. I don't think it was the only factor that was convincing our social influencers to work with us. Even if that stops, you would stop working with us or working for the greater cause of bringing peace in Nigeria, right? The cause is much bigger than whatever we could offer. So that's just one idea for innovation, which everyone thinks of WhatsApp and thinks of social media. Innovation can be in many different forms. And I cannot tell you what the next innovation would be. Be always open for innovation. Be always thinking for innovation, right? And maybe we would reach ideas which would be a very cost-effective model for continued peace-building work together. And this would, without a funding partnership, maybe in the next initiative, if we remain connected, we would already count on you. That yes, we have, I was discussing with David the other day, he was saying, okay, what would that mean, like continued cooperation? I said, I have 20 social media influencers, how would you like them? And he was very much interested, right? Because you are not just ordinary Facebook users. This was the criteria with which some of you were selected, right? And what we really tried was also to have a nationwide reach. So it was a really proud moment that I was able to tell that to my colleague on the national orientation side. And I'm sure he has many other initiatives much bigger than what we are thinking or what we can think of, that he will be able to work closely with you. I'll stop here and I'll let my colleague speak if he likes, but I'll also be welcoming questions as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much once again, Cher. Like you rightly said, I was pretty excited when you spoke about the media influencers. Every component of the work that we do at the National Orientation Agency also requires some sort of media intervention. Away from COVID-19 and its impact, presently we are concerned about the political atmosphere in the build-up to the 2023 general elections. And we think that the media will play a huge role, you know, in this area. We're also growing an army of fact-checkers across the country, which Cher also spoke about. We're conducting a series of basic national training on fact-checking, drawing participation from different parts of the country. What that is doing for us is we're establishing a WhatsApp fact-checking community, you know, across public and private sector. We're having robust participation from intelligence agencies of government, from security and the armed forces, you know, as well as critical ministries and departments and agencies of government participate in these basic fact-check training programs. So how we intend to connect with you as media influencers will be in the area of helping us to disseminate some of the outcomes and some of the informations that will help to build social cohesion. I'm sure, as you already know, periods of general elections tend to also be periods when our fault lines, our national fault lines, are exploited by politicians to create division for selfish personal gains and to put out narratives that makes us to see ourselves less as one people, you know, but belonging to different keep, and which sometimes leads to conflict and loss of lives. So we're very conscious of this fact, and we would be working with you, you know, on the basis of some of the principles already established with SEARCH to ensure that you are useful to some of the work that we'll be doing in this direction. We are also concerned about national funding deficits. You know, our nation is going through very terrible times. demanding more and more revenue outflows, even in the face of less and less inflows. So one of the areas we're looking at to assist government to increase revenue and perhaps decrease the need to continue borrowing is to carry out some level of tax education, to assist tax authorities to broaden the tax net. Compared to some of our African country neighbors, Nigeria's percentage of tax net inclusion is laughable. And that's because largely the people that pay tax out here are mostly those who are within the public and private corporate sector, where taxes can be deducted at source, from salaries. But we have a huge population of non-formal sector people who contribute to development. So if we broaden the tax net and we encourage people and also show them how these taxes are utilized for the benefit of the majority, we might be able to increase our national revenues. So in the immediate, not too distant, I see us also working together, in this to enlighten the public, especially youth segment, on the need to embrace tax compliance. So these are just a few of some of the things that came to my mind when I had this conversation with Cher. National Orientation Agency has an overarching mandate that cuts across all sectors. That's why you would see me talking about COVID-19, which is health sector. You see me talking about revenues, which is economic. And then you see me talking about elections, which is political. Our mandate cuts across the entire spectrum of human life. And the public has expectations of us, just as the government also has expectations. So the work field is large. And I'm glad to be connected to you guys and include you guys in the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. And one thing I forgot to mention, and thank God it's reminded to me, that as part of our goodwill gesture, we would continue sharing our rumor tracking bulletins with National Orientation Agency for the next 3 months, so that we establish this partnership with a strong background. But then, of course, as we move along, we would establish other avenues of partnership so that we can continue collaboration. Now I'll hand over back to Joy, and we are open for questions. The beauty of finishing early or being on time is it can be participative and interactive. So feel free to ask any questions or share something which you think can be useful. Thank you.
Over to you, Matilda here.
I will just add something which was touched upon in the different presentation, but I think this project was also a huge learning for Search as an organization. And I think a lot of what you've done in Nigeria, but also in other countries, will continue to inform the design of future projects. For instance, what we've done on the small initiatives across 4 different countries was also a kind of first timer in a way. So this will also enable us to integrate that in our future programs, because now we know what works well, what works less well, etc. So I think this was, and having this short-term rapid response project across so many countries is also something that will be informing a future global project, which is something we start having more and more at Search. So yeah, it was just to flag this as well. I think as an organization, we learned a lot from the different innovative activities and practices that were done by the different country teams, and this will definitely help us in future projects. And the work that was done on Connexus, with some, including with some of you, with the entire network of influencers coming from the entire world, also created a lot of synergies between influencers from different countries. We had events with influencers from different countries that did like live streaming on Facebook, for instance, to tackle different issues and how they were answering to them in the different communities, which is something that also is very innovative. And that's something we can also integrate in future projects. And that's also why this Connexus platform is going to live beyond the COVID-19 project and is now expanded to also have tackle different themes. So yeah, I think as an organization, this was a very useful project for us also to grow further. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you very much. So the floor is open for questions. Let's quickly have a discussion. We have the country director here, so I'll advise the young ones to open up and let's have a discussion around sustainability plan on this project.
And it can be both questions and comments, right?
Yes.
So we are happy to take comments.
Yeah, comments. You have the mic just right in front of you. You can just and share your comments. And after that session, I'll still take one or two more beneficiaries to share their success stories. But I would really love us to speak. Yeah. Thank you so much, participants. So please, I want us to speak. That's why we're here.
Very rare, not to have questions, comments, with so many youth in the room. One thing I really advocate for Nigerian youth is they are vibrant and vocal, and they know how to articulate themselves.
Okay, Miriam, yeah.
Yeah, mine is part of the sustainability plan. I think is a kind of request because I don't know whether I am the only participant related to CSOs. I can see most are media and bloggers. So I don't know if you can have a platform of the participant where we can share ideas and network as a kind of sustainability plan.
What I understand from that, and this is very right, we thought about connecting the social media influencers to the relevant government body, but now it goes beyond that, right? Because the CSO wants to be connected, and why not, right? It's going to be a community-wide cooperation, a continuation of cooperation. So I like my colleagues to take note of that and make it possible in a way that is not too crowded on a platform, but maybe multiple platforms can be established for continuation of this cooperation. Yeah.
Okay. Tolu, you can go.
Thank you very much. My question is a concern. Most of these materials designed and distributed on these different radio and television platforms, sometimes specifically paid for in these channels. However, some of us who have produced these things have a relationship with some other organization whom we may be able to persuade, speak with, to continue to distribute these materials. Is this a workable plan? And when I say persuade and collaborate with, they are willing to take it on as a content on their channel without the necessary encumbrance of costs and all that. So how is it a possibility for this to happen? Thank you.
Well, that's a very important question, and I would have liked to answer in affirmative, but with a caveat, right? Because when we have a contract with a donor, anything produced as part of a project becomes the intellectual property of the funding partner, right? That's just a clause in the contract which I wanted to share. But this doesn't stop us from exploring, and nothing stops us from going to the donor and asking for permission. And I'm looking at my colleagues from Brussels as well, that there's no harm in doing that, right? Like, it's not a business that we want to keep it as intellectual property and, make money out of it, of course, right? So we will, as long as it is used for a social cause, we would be able to think about it, but what needs to be done on a very practical point of view is a formal request to come up, right? We cannot just give a blanket approval, because there can be some information which would not remain conflict sensitive. You talk about lockdown 3 years from now when the lockdown is not there, a reality anymore, so it might not make sense, to say the least, right? So whenever you want to do that, if it comes in as a request with a rationale, what I can promise from this forum is we will put it forward. And I don't think there would be any big problems in getting those approvals. But just for the due diligence, we have to follow the process. But anyway, if someone has any additional comments on that. Okay, yeah, so if you have something in mind already, just write to us. And I don't say that this would be a long process, as long as you can justify or share that it is done for a social cause. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. While we are still thinking of our questions or our comments, we have Vision Media in the house. They were also part of the small initiative, and they carried out their own work in Nasarawa State. Nasarawa State is a state not too far from Abuja. So let's quickly have you in 1 minute speak about the successes that Vision Media was able to achieve across the different communities you carried out the initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy. I would like to thank Search for Common Ground for providing grounds for Vision Media Services to be part of this project. We carried out our project in the community called Pianco, and we did some advocacy to the community where we met with traditional rulers, we met with opinion leaders, the youth, the women, and even the children. And one thing we found out was the disjoint and dislocation as a result of the pandemic, because the women were not able to go to their market, no interactions. Even the men who had their jobs because of the lockdown now stayed at home, which were grounds for conflicts. And even the children in school could not go to school because of the era of lockdown. So we carried out our sensitization, our advocacy to the traditional rulers, to the youth and the women, to ensure social cohesion, how to live peacefully, and also to dispel some rumors that have been going around about the pandemic, which they looked at some of the occurrences as some of them were natural occurrences, some of them were strange illness that will not be found amongst them and the likes. And we also took them through the path of, some of them wearing of face masks was something that was alien to them, use of hand sanitizers they barely do not have, and all of that. So advocacy to them helped them to mainstream them into, changing their mode of doing things and see that it's a new normal that they have to adjust to. And so that because we encourage them to know that there is a life after this pandemic, it's not the shutting down of their lives, that yes, there is survival beyond this. And I think that really worked well for the community within the period. So we thank Search for Common Ground for that enablement.
Thank you. One thing I would like to mention here, when we talk about sustainability and continued cooperation, we would like to acknowledge, and it's true for Surge, and I think it's as much going to be true for National Orientation Agency, we'll look at the media not as a service provider, but a partner, right? And we would like the same to be reciprocated, and we have enjoyed the same sentiments from the media side as well, because we cannot get things done without the support of our colleagues on the other side of the table, on the media outlets part, right? And at the end of the day, our success is entirely dependent on how much our colleagues in the media own the cause with us as much as we do, right? So thank you for all the support to you and all the other media outlets have provided throughout this project. I would also like to thank the media that's here to cover this event. I'm sorry if I forgot to do that in the start, but you know, without you, we would be just talking to ourselves in this room. But with your support, we are now being heard, and we are captured to be heard even afterwards. So thanks for everything, and I hope the cooperation continues.
Okay, thank you very much. Sure. That's the much we can take from the beneficiaries. We won't be taking more. I don't know what is this thing with these beneficiaries.
Those of us, we come from humanitarian background.
So participants, I beg your pardon. So that's the much we can take from our participants for today. And since we don't have any more questions, we are meant to be taking the closing remark from the DFA. But,
in the absence of DFA, I'd like Chiaka as a leadership management team member to share her vote of thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you everyone who showed up today. Thank you to everyone who's been a part of this project from the start up until now. I know that this project was really very vital to what we do at Search, because like Cher said at the beginning, this is one project that, you know, that we didn't have opportunity to plan, you know, sit down in a room, brainstorm and plan, but it's just so good to see how the project has finally turned out at the end of the day. So that actually says, speaks to how much we can collaborate, you know, innovatively, even in times of distress, in times of conflict, or in just, you know, awkward times. So thank you to everyone that have done something in the course of the project, and thank you to everyone who also made out time from their very busy schedules to participate in the closeout meeting. This has been very, very insightful, and we've talked so much about sustainability, so it's also to say, let's keep pushing. Let's make sure that this doesn't end. The pandemic is still with us, you know. The COVID hasn't gone away. If COVID has gone away, we all wouldn't be wearing our face masks, but COVID hasn't gone away, so it's to keep up the good work, keep spreading the message, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much, Chiaka. Thank you so much. A round of applause. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So finally, we'll still be having some sessions of photographs outside. But now, please, let's go offline. Let's stop live streaming the event. We're going to be having a security brief session again. So I'll endure us all to please be patient as we have that security brief session immediately. After then, we can go for lunch. And we'll have some series of photographs outside. Thank you. I think the live streaming has stopped already.